Welcome back to the science of COVID-19. In this video, I'm going to talk about the immune response that our bodies mount to the coronavirus. So when the coronavirus enters the cell, our cells, our body knows that it's not supposed to be there. And it starts secreting all of these chemicals that attract the cells of the immune system, like T cells, macrophages, monocytes. And it essentially says, invader, we're being attacked, we need help, we need backup. So in a healthy immune response, what should ideally happen is that all of these immune cells come to the site of action where the virus is. And they do two things primarily. One is that some of these cells actually kill our cells that have the virus inside of them, because that's the only way to get rid of those viruses and prevent them from replicating. And then other cells of the immune system, primarily B cells, produce antibodies that attach to these virus particles and prevent them from going to other cells and invading other cells. So this together is really important for controlling and containing the virus. Now, ideally, all of this activity results in the infected cells being rapidly cleared away, all of the inflammation being contained, and there is minimal lung damage, minimal inflammation. We feel perhaps really crappy for a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, but for most of us, hopefully that should subside and we feel better after the immune system response has calmed down. Unfortunately, in some of us, the virus wreaks a lot of havoc, and there is an unhealthy immune response or a non-ideal immune response. In this case, instead of controlling the virus, the activity of our immune system actually intensifies the damage, intensifies the inflammation, and ends up damaging our own organs. So there is too much inflammation, too many destructive chemicals being released, and fluid gets into the lungs called pulmonary edema. It makes it very hard for us to breathe. And this inflammation not only attacks and damages lung tissue, but other organs as well. So this is a really, really serious situation. And these are the individuals that unfortunately are often in intensive care units for some length of time. Now, why does the immune system behave one way in some individuals and another way in other individuals? Unfortunately, we don't know the answer to that yet. And that's a really intense area of investigation among scientists. Here's another way to think about a healthy immune response versus an unhealthy immune response, or a controlled viral infection versus an uncontrolled viral infection. So on the top is what we hope would happen, which is that the virus invades and then different components of the immune system activate to contain the virus. So here, the red shows activity of the innate immune system. So that's some parts of the immune system that are not specific to the virus or the bacteria. They're just going to fight any invader that's in your body. And so this activity increases, the inflammation occurs, but then it peaks at some level and it starts going down. Shortly after this innate immune system is activated, the adaptive immune system increases in activity. And these are the cells that actually attack our cells that have the virus in a healthy way, and the B cells that produce antibodies that attach to the virus and prevent those virus particles from invading other cells. And lastly, some of these antibodies or some of these memory B cells that were producing the antibodies stick around, so that if we're exposed to the virus again, hopefully we don't get sick again. Those cells are ready to produce antibodies and mount an aggressive immune response to prevent the virus from doing any damage in our body. As a result of all of this immune activity, the levels of the virus increase peak at some level, and then decrease. It's cleared from our system, and we feel better eventually. Now, in an uncontrolled viral infection, what happens is that the innate immune system activity increases, but then instead of going down, it continues. And this continues to attack our cells and do damage to our cells. There's a lot of inflammatory chemicals around in our body. Moreover, the adaptive immune system, which is supposed to be producing antibodies, doesn't work so well. And these cells can't really fight the virus very much. So as a result, the virus levels don't really go down, and it's in our body for quite some time. Again, we're not quite sure why some people have the upper immune response and some people have the lower immune response. Now, another really important thing about this COVID-19 or this specific coronavirus is that, as we've been seeing, a lot of people who get well, so presumably this top immune response, even though they don't have any more virus that we can detect in their body, they still have, unfortunately, all of these long-term symptoms. So there are stories of individuals that were athletes, and after they got sick, even 2 or 3 months later, they're still having trouble walking a couple of blocks across, town. Or other individuals that have these really weird and bizarre sort of side effects that they can't get rid of. They have very low energy. Some of them can't go back to work. And we're not sure why this is happening, but it seems like even though we can't detect a virus anymore, there's some sort of long-term consequence of this virus in our body. And whether it's partly because these components of the immune system are still active, or another reason, we're not sure. So in the last video, I talked about multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children, which is this really severe syndrome that occurs in some children that have been infected with this coronavirus. And I mentioned that we don't know why some children get really, really sick. But from what we've just discussed about the immune system, I think it's reasonable to suppose that there are some differences in their immune system, maybe some genetic variations that cause their immune system to behave differently than in other children. And this might lead to some of these really toxic side effects of the virus. So, another really interesting area that has come up in studying this coronavirus is this concept of gender differences in mortality. A lot of data from across different countries have suggested that men and women might react to this virus differently. So on the left here is a graph showing the case fatality rate between men and women. Blue is men, women are in pink. Actually, it's males and females. I don't know the exact ages of all the individuals that they used in this study. And on the left are the different countries that they were able to retrieve data from. Now, the case fatality rate is essentially what is the chance of dying if you get the coronavirus, if you are infected with SARS-CoV-2. And what you can see is that this case fatality rate, or the chance of dying, varies widely across countries. Some of this might be due to the different demographic structure of the country. We know that older individuals are more likely to suffer severe consequences of COVID-19 than younger individuals. So some of the countries such as, let's say, South Africa or Bangladesh might have a really young population. There could also be public policy or health policy structures that are different amongst these countries. In either case, though, or in any case, I should say, the really striking thing is that no matter what the case fatality rate is, in each country, for the most part, men have a higher case fatality rate than women. And this is true, across the board, mostly. Here's another way of looking at it. This is the case fatality rate by age. So in each decade of life, what is the chance of dying if you are infected with the coronavirus? And the interesting thing is that even though the case fatality rate for both men and women increases as you increase in age, at each decade, it is higher for men than women. Why is this? Again, another mystery of this SARS-CoV-2, this COVID-19. We're not sure. It's reasonable to suppose that it could be because of some genetic differences in how the immune systems of males versus females work. So there are many different components of the immune system, and all of them have slight differences or can have slight differences between men and women. Interestingly, women or females seem to have a higher antibody response to certain viruses. So their ability to make antibodies and neutralize the virus is higher than in men on average. And this might be something that helps them to control the coronavirus more efficiently within their system. We don't think that there's a difference between men and women getting infected, meaning they have the same chance of being exposed to coronavirus and getting it inside their body. But in some sense, women are more able to control the virus. Interestingly, this increased antibody response in females might have other consequences that are not so great. So, for example, women have a much higher rate of autoimmune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. And some investigators think that this might be because their antibody response in general is higher. So they might unfortunately be mounting or creating an antibody response against their own body at times, resulting in an autoimmune sort of phenomenon. In the case of COVID-19, though, it seems to be protective. All right, thank you so much, and I'll see you for the next video.